All right, Julia Metzger, honey, it's so great to see you. Now,
Wonderful to see you too.
now what you're going to do is you're leaving the day school, pick it up from there and take us to the present.
Okay, great. Well, I graduated from the day school after eighth grade. Um, and I went after graduating from the day school to Suncoast for 1 year, actually, where my brother Charlie, who's also a Day Academy graduate, went. And I was there for 1 year and really loved the intellectual rigor of different aspects of the program. I was in a sort of combined intellectual baccalaureate and then math, science, and engineering track, but was interested in going to a place that offered more outside the classroom as well to sort of complement that in-classroom experience. So I ended up going to Groton, a boarding school starting in 10th grade. And I was in Groton from 10th, 11th, and 12th and graduated there in 2011. And when I think back to that time, I'm sort of amazed at how busy I was. I was just had such wonderfully full and rich days there. It was wonderful working hard in classes and being in a really intellectually inspiring and fulfilling place. And also so many opportunities outside the classroom, sports every trimester, and working with the chapel and Christian fellowship.
I had a student, a female, and she was applying to private schools, and the mother wanted her to go to Groton. That was the mother wanted her to go to Groton. So we were just talking about it. The student and I were talking about it, and she mentioned Groton. I said, "Oh, what a wonderful school! The school presidents. So many presidents have gone to Groton. The academic, it's the greatest." I said. Then I said, somewhat austere. Well, the next day, the mother came roaring into me. How could you tell her it was austere? Never. I think the girl did go to there. I'm not going to make names, but
no, then you didn't do too much damage.
Huh?
You didn't do too much damage. Sounds like her mom ended up getting her there. It was wonderful. They also so many opportunities there. I was reminiscing recently because they have a woodworking shop that they have students take classes in if you want to do shop at Groton. And the woodworking teacher just retired. He'd been there for decades and was thinking back to what a unique opportunity it is to make furniture in high school. I don't think a lot of places offer that. That was pretty fun. And then after Groton, I took a gap year. I delayed going to college, going to Princeton for a year. And I think that was one of the best decisions I've made. It was really formative and really transformational to get to plan out, almost 15 months of different activities and experiences, and think about how I wanted to go into and approach my college experience, what I wanted to get out of it, what sort of classes and focuses I wanted to look at, thinking about a future career. And it was just a year full of adventure. I backpacked with NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, in Alaska for a month. I did a sort of religious immersion program for a month. I lived in Costa Rica with a local family on a dairy farm for a month and learned how to milk cows and make cheese and spoke Spanish. It was a whirlwind tour, but really wonderful. Did some science related things too, since I was always sort of interested in biology. Did an ecology internship, and then also interned for a nonprofit, Autism Speaks, in more of the healthcare setting. And then arrived at Princeton in the fall, hot off the trails of this backpacking trip, and really, really loved Princeton. It was, I think Princeton was always sort of synonymous with college for me, since my dad had gone to Princeton, and then Charlie, my older brother, had gone to Princeton, and they're very big into reunions. And so I had been back to Princeton's campus many times as a young kid, and then to visit Charlie. And so I was pretty thrilled and excited to go there. I think for the most part, it lived up to its expectations. My closest friends are from those years on campus. And my fiance is someone that I met at Princeton. So lots of wonderful things that I'm grateful to Princeton for offering, in addition to the incredible academic rigor, worked really, really hard and loved it. And then after Princeton, I did another sort of gap year of sorts before. Medicine had always been, I'm in medical school now, and medicine had been on the horizon, but I got a lot of advice from people to really think about that decision, given the sort of immense commitment of time and money and effort, and think about exploring other avenues and exploring more of myself and my own interests and seeing if it was really a good fit for medicine. So I did a year in Southern Africa in Botswana teaching middle and high school math, which brought such a deep and profound and new understanding for what you, Mr. Greco, and all of the teachers at the day school do on a daily basis. Teaching is so hard. And I think we're all, at least I was lulled into this sense that I sort of knew what teaching would be like because I'd been in formal education for so many years of my life. And I thought, well, how hard can it be? I've done this every day as a student. And the answer is really, really hard. But it was a really worthwhile and wonderful challenge the whole year, and got really close with a lot of students, helped, I think, imbue a similar sense of excitement about math and solving those puzzles that I got from Mrs. Close and Mrs. Barbieri and others at the day school, and hopefully shared some of that excitement and passion with them. So that was a year. And then moving right along, I moved to Washington, D.C. after that. And I spent 2 years in DC working for McKinsey, doing consulting in the healthcare space. So I worked exclusively with hospital systems, large and small, mostly nonprofit, and seeing the business side of healthcare and making a little bit of money before going to medical school. So after those 2 years were up, which was another interesting stint, I think I got to see a lot of different aspects of healthcare that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. After those 2 years, I applied to and ended up here at NYU School of Medicine in New York City, where I currently live with my fiance, who's a software engineer working at a company called Asana. And it's crazy to think about, but almost finishing my second year of medical school of 4 years. So nearly halfway there now, and have started in January my clinical time. So I'm in the hospital full time all day, every day. And we rotate through in a sort of apprenticeship model, different specialties. So I've done emergency medicine and neurology. And then I just finished my obstetrics and gynecology clerkship, and I start on surgery on Monday. So I'll be in the operating room come Monday. And great. That's the, in a nutshell, those are the intervening years since the day school and now.
Okay, now let me ask you a couple questions. Number one,
please.
The end of your second year in med school, do you have any inclinations now as to which direction, which specialist you want? Were you still searching and want to get the experience of?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, and it's hard as a planner not to immediately think about that almost every day because it's the next big juncture. The short answer is no. I have the deluxe problem of liking almost everything, which is wonderful. I think it means I'll be happy doing a lot of different possible specialties, but it doesn't make it any easier to make the decision that I eventually will have to make. So I'm just coming off of OBGYN, so maybe it's recency bias, but I absolutely loved it. I loved the patients, I loved the people, I loved the residents and the teams I was working with. A surgery that ends in a baby and a C-section is so exciting. And vaginal deliveries too were just so incredible to be a part of. It's a really transformational time for families, and I think a unique opportunity to be able to provide care in that type of often really joyful and infrequent healthcare setting. So I'm hot off the tails of OBGYN and really love it. But you'll have to stay tuned, Mr. Greco. I've got lots of, as you said, lots more to experience, and I'm still undecided.
So you haven't made up your mind yet. Now, of course, you're going into surgery. That will be an eye opener for you, and you might decide that you want to go into brain surgery, which would mean another 25 years of training, right?
I know, exactly. We'll see. I think And OBGYN, doing cesarean sections in the operating room was a little bit of a taste. And I do love being in the OR. I love working with my hands, and there's a really wonderful immediate gratification to surgery of, a health problem that we're actually able to solve in some respects a lot of the time. So that's appealing, but I'll get a full immersion come Monday. So we'll see.
One of the, who I'm trying to think who I interviewed before, who's a doctor now, and this was years ago. So I said, well, how did you make the decision? He said, well, Mr. Greco, he said, I found out that I wanted surgery. I really loved surgery, but he said, I wanted happy surgery. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I decided to go into orthopedics because orthopedics, you know what I mean? The outcome are usually good unless it's something really terrible, catastrophe, someone loses them. But for the most part, you're putting in a new knee, you're putting in a new hip, and the outcome is good. So maybe you'll get in there and think about orthopedics.
Yeah, maybe. Time will tell.
So anyway, Han, okay, so let's go back a little bit. First, I always ask this question, and I get a lot of answers and very insightful answers. What is at this very young age now that you've been in the medical thing, what's your perception of medicine in the United States as you see it? Where are we headed? Where should we be going? Are we going there?
Sure. It's a great and hard and complex question. I think that there are certain elements of healthcare here in America and in the U.S. that we've gotten right, and quite a few that need some improvement and potentially even full overhaul. It's an interesting question as a doctor, and I think we get more and more elements of this in our pre-clerkship and our early education in medical school, and hopefully even more. But there's a challenge between the policymakers and those in DC and the government who are setting some of these nationwide policies, and the people on the receiving end and the people practicing as doctors in hospitals abiding by those policies and working within their constraints and trying to take advantage of their different opportunities. And I think there's an interesting sort of need for more doctors who are interested in advocacy and policy work to help channel up what some of the day-to-day challenges and bigger picture struggles are for a lot of our different patient populations. And I think hopefully one of the changes will be more and more incorporation of that into medical school as education evolves. I think there's a big opportunity for that. But on the bigger picture, I wish I knew where the country was headed. I think there are a lot of different ideas and a lot of different possibilities of where we'll be 50 years from now. I think I have the opportunity at NYU to work in multiple different hospital settings. So we have, they call it sort of the super block of hospitals. We have a public hospital, Bellevue Hospital, and then our academic institution, NYU Langone Hospital, and then various different other partners. We have a Veterans Affairs, government-run hospital that we're affiliated with. And so getting to see care in these different environments, I think helps illustrate some of the challenges that resource-constrained versus not hospitals face. And it's really challenging. It's really difficult to have patients come in who don't have the healthcare, be it primary healthcare of a doctor monitoring their high blood pressure, their diabetes, their high cholesterol, or not having the mental health that they need, or even beyond sort of the broader social factors that really influence people's health, not having a home, not having a job, not having social support. All of those factors we're, I think, starting to see more and more in the healthcare world, contributing to what we historically thought of as medical outcomes. And so I'm hopeful and optimistic that there's a path through this this maze. But as we were often told last year, and I think now that we're in the hospital, we're starting to see there are many ways in which the system is broken. And it's somewhat incumbent on us as the next generation of doctors to understand the specific ways in which it's broken and help build some of the solutions.
You know, Han, I had an interesting interview with a former student in medicine. And he said, you know, Mr. Greco, and especially for you, you're right. You have 2 more years of med school. So you're right on the front of this new thing that he was describing. He said, you know, Mr. Greco, he says, number one, he said, you realize that for the last couple million years, the human beings have developed according to natural selection, Darwinism, natural selection. That's how we have developed. And it's been like that since we've been on the earth here. But he said, now we're getting to the point where the human being in the future may not be a product of natural selection as Darwin knew it, but it's going to be of man selection. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Well, he says, we're already there if you think of it. Take cyborgs, for example. Cyborgs aren't, we got a new knee, we got a new hip, we got this new, that new. He said, do you know, he said, I read a medical journal in which one of the writers said, between 50 and 100 years, we may be amortal. I said, what do you mean amortal? He said, we'll die, but only by accidents or murder or things like that. But we're not going to be dying because of cancer or things like that. And once we move past that, the next stage we're going to be in is natural selection is out. We are going to be able to be programming human beings. And they're already working on it as far as computers, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, after I finished talking to him, I thought, my God, that's mind-boggling. That natural selection, you know, we learned in school, biology, natural, Darwin, natural, that's how we know. We may be to the point where we are able to decide what that being is going to be, and we're going to create it. What do you think of that?
I think it's an interesting idea. I think mind-boggling is a great adjective for it. I think I see elements of truth already in what you were explaining. First, there are certainly ways in which I don't know that I totally agree that we're past the natural selection stage, but I think there are certainly pressures that we've been able to pretty effectively eradicate. I've talked with friends about eyesight. You know, if you think back to the hunter-gatherer days, people with poor eyesight might not have made it that long because you got eaten by a lion. But even a pretty rudimentary, development of, every contacts glasses that you're effectively, 20/20, even if you have a pretty big vision deficit, is amazing. And we've been able to sort of maneuver around that type of pressure. And I think there are lots of ways in which it's the wonderful developments and progress of medicine has made certain diseases and certain pressures no longer there. And I think we've then unearthed these other challenges that are still medical and health related. And so I'm not sure if your former guest gave a time frame for it. I think maybe that's our future if we're able to keep our planet healthy enough to stick around that long. But I foresee more roadblocks to getting there than they did. I think there are many different layers of pressures we're gonna get to before we're at the amortal stage. But that's a new term for me. That's interesting.
Okay, all right. Let's go back in time a little bit.
Sure.
You're in Palm Beach Day School. Okay, honey.
Mm-hmm.
Let me jag your memory a little bit. You remember your 10-minute speech? Do you remember your 10-minute speech?
I remember giving it, but I wonder I'm not sure I remember what I spoke about.
Huh?
I think I know for one of my speeches I did the wonders of the world to to give some structure moving from
Okay.
thing to thing. Um, I certainly remember delivering speeches in your class, definitely.
Do you remember your 75 lines in Julius Caesar and Cyrano de Bergerac?
I
Memorize?
know that I did Roxanne, Roxanne, along my veins, Roxanne.
Do you remember it?
Just to make you laugh. Yeah, of course.
Uh, um, what were some of your memories? You remember Field Day?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Field Day?
Yep. And we
Were
often
you a
joke as a
pelican?
family. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Were you a pelican or flamingo?
Pelican.
Oh, good. You were a
Oh,
pelican.
yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Obviously the better team. But it was always so fun. One of the things I loved about field day was having all the different grades together, and you get to see the little kindergartners on their, bouncy balls racing each other, and then the older student events and the soccer games, and it was great. And the Knowledge Bowl, also fun.
Right. What were what were the favorite books we read?
I loved The Count of Monte Cristo, which
So many times.
I know, fan favorite. I have a funny story there where my Charlie, who is 3 years older, also, a student of yours, and read The Count of Monte Cristo. And when I was, and maybe it was even an older brother of mine, but he used to talk about this book all the time, and he would say the name so quickly that I somehow thought it was Anna Monte Cristo, this like one word complex. Oh yes, Charlie's reading Anna Monte Cristo. So I was always so sort of fearful and uncertain about what this Anna Monte Cristo book would be. And then The Count of Monte Cristo was one of my favorites. It was phenomenal. Yeah.
So now where Charlie now is where? Doing what?
Charlie is lucky for me. He lives close by in Jersey City, New Jersey, and he is graduating from Fordham Law School.
He's graduating this year.
This year. Mm-hmm. He lives there with his wife, and they got a quarantine puppy. So it's been wonderful to see them and be close to them now that I'm in New York.
Charlie, I hope, I hope I'm still alive to be able to vote for Charlie for president of the United States.
I'm with you. I think he'd be phenomenal.
Should be. He's the one that should be. Are they what law school?
At Fordham.
He's at Fordham.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to stay in New York, or he's going to be in New York? Okay.
He'll be in New York. Mm-hmm. His wife is principal of a school, an elementary school in New Jersey, in Newark. And so they live in New Jersey, but he'll be continuing to commute to New York. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So, is he planning on hooking up with a firm, or since he's graduating from law school, what he should do, what I'd like to see him do, is become with one of the Supreme Court judges.
Mm-hmm.
And then
a clerk, yeah.
Into because he belongs in politics. We got to get good people in politics.
I'm with you. I'm
people.
so with you, Mr. Greco. Well, we'll have to call him up and have you speak your mind about where he should go. I think Charlie would be wonderful in a lot of different avenues, but I think more politicians like Charlie is never a bad thing.
I'm speaking selfishly. I think he would be better as making the decisions for this country. How are your mom and dad?
They're great. Thanks for asking. Yeah, they're in Palm Beach. It's wonderful, to visit whenever we can amidst our busy lives. And they're actually coming up soon for Charlie's graduation. So it'll be nice to be all together.
Now, how often do you get to Palm Beach? West Palm Beach?
Not as often as I'd like. Medical school keeps us pretty busy. Right. But I try to get down for the holidays at least.
Okay.
At least once.
Now, what I want you to do is promise me that the next time you're able to get here, you'll give me a call before and let me know you're coming so that we can have lunch. Okay?
I will. I will not
Call me.
email. I will call. Old school
Call
phone.
me, call me, call me. My name's in the phone book.
I sure will, Mr. Greco. That would be wonderful.
Okay, Hen. Well, thank
Be a
you
treat.
so much. This has been so great. And I love these things so much. Okay. Okay, dear.